All right, welcome. Today we are diving into something that sounds a little bit out there at first. We're looking at the work of law professor Eric D. Chason, who points out a pretty wild connection between Bitcoin and, of all things, real estate law.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like a strange comparison, right? You've got this physical piece of paper, a deed, that proves you own a chunk of land. And then you have Bitcoin, something totally digital with no central company in charge. But that's the big question we're going to unpack today. And believe me, the parallels are kind of mind-blowing.
Okay, so this is basically our guide. Every single important part of a traditional property sale has a direct parallel in the Bitcoin world. The deed? That's just a transaction. The public records office? That's the blockchain. And the county recorder, the official who stamps everything? Well, that role is played by Bitcoin miners. We're going to tackle each of these one by one.
So let's start at the beginning, at the individual level. Before we can talk about this huge public record for everyone, we've got to understand how a single person proves they own a Bitcoin, and more importantly, how they can hand it over to someone else, just like signing over a deed.
To make this real, let's just imagine a fun scenario. Say you have a very generous uncle, and he wants to gift you 50 Bitcoin. Now, this isn't like him just Venmoing you some cash. It requires a formal, secure process, a lot like him signing over the title to a piece of property.
First things first, for you to even receive this gift, you need a digital identity. But this isn't like signing up for an email account. It's a cryptographic process you do yourself. You start by generating something called a private key. Think of it as your ultimate super secret password. From that key, some math is used to create a public key. And from that, you get a Bitcoin address. That address is like your public username that you can give to your uncle.
So you end up with two things, a public address you can share with anyone, and a private key that you absolutely must guard with your life. And this right here is a huge deal. It's a massive shift in personal responsibility. You are literally your own bank. If you lose that private key, your Bitcoin is gone, forever. There's a famous, heartbreaking story of a guy who accidentally threw out a hard drive with 7,500 Bitcoin on it. It's just sitting in a landfill somewhere, lost for all time. Okay, so you give your public address to your uncle. What he does next is create what we can think of as a Bitcoin deed. It's really just a simple text file, a little message that says, I am authorizing the transfer of 50 Bitcoin from my address over to your address. It's the digital version of a signed, notarized document. But wait a minute. This is where we hit a huge, huge problem. The same problem property law has been dealing with for centuries. Forgery, right? Anyone could just create a text file claiming your uncle is sending them money. So how does the Bitcoin network actually prove that this transfer order is authentic and that it really, truly came from him?
The answer is something called a digital signature. Your uncle uses his secret private key and that text message, the Bitcoin deed, to generate a unique cryptographic signature. It's like a digital seal of approval that is mathematically tied to him and only to that specific transaction. It does the job of his handwritten signature and a notary stamp all in one go. And this, right here, is where the real magic of this cryptography comes in. The act of signing that transaction requires your uncle's secret private key. Only he can do it. But, and this is the brilliant part, the act of verifying that signature can be done by anyone in the world using only his public key. We can all prove he signed it without ever needing to see his secret.
All right, so we've got the individual transfer down. One person can securely send Bitcoin to another. But now we have to zoom out and tackle a much, much bigger challenge. How does the entire network of millions of people all agree on who owns what?
This is famously known as the double spend problem, and it is the absolute core challenge any digital money has to solve. Think about it. With a house, you can't sell the same house to two different people because there's a central record office that would stop you. But in a digital system, what's to stop your uncle from making two perfectly valid Bitcoin deeds? One sending 50 Bitcoin to you and another sending the very same 50 Bitcoin to your cousin.
And the solution to this massive problem is probably the one word you've heard before, the blockchain. Just like real estate depends on a central public records office to keep track of every deed and prevent this kind of fraud, Bitcoin relies on a decentralized public ledger that everyone can see and verify.
So how does this public ledger stay secure and in sync without anyone in charge? Well, it uses a really clever tool called a cryptographic hash. The best way to think about it is as a unique digital fingerprint for any piece of data. The magic here is that if you change the data in any way at all, like even just changing one comma, the entire fingerprint changes completely. This makes any kind of tampering super obvious and incredibly easy to spot.
And here's how that all comes together. All the recent Bitcoin deeds, all those transactions, get bundled together into a block. Then, that entire block gets its own unique digital fingerprint, its hash. Now here's the key. The next block of transactions that gets created has to include the hash of the block that came right before it. This forges a linked, chronological, and for all practical purposes unchangeable chain of blocks. To change a transaction in the past, you'd have to redo its fingerprint and the fingerprint of every single block that came after it. That's a nearly impossible task.
So we have our digital deeds, the transactions, and we have our public record book, the blockchain. But there is still one crucial piece of the puzzle missing. Who actually gets to write the new pages, the new blocks, into that public record book? This brings us to our final piece, the digital notary.
Exactly. In a system with no boss, no government, no central server, who gets the authority to finalize all these transactions? Who gets to add the next block to the official record for the whole world to see?
The answer is, well, it's a little wild. It's a global, competitive network of computers run by people we call miners. And their function is exactly that of our county recorder or a notary public. They don't know each other, they certainly don't trust each other, but it's their fierce competition for a prize that actually secures the entire system and keeps it honest.
Here's how that competition works. All the miners around the world grab the latest unconfirmed transactions. Then, they all start racing to solve an incredibly difficult but easily verifiable math puzzle. The very first one to find the solution gets the right to add their block to the chain. This is what solves the double spend problem. It establishes a clear order of events, and most importantly, for all that effort and the electricity they used, the winning miner is rewarded with brand new Bitcoin. That incentive is the engine that powers the security of the whole network.
So let's just tie all of this together. When you step back and you look at all these different pieces, the keys, the transactions, the blockchain, the miners, you see something truly profound emerge from the code. You see a system of rules that governs property, but without any traditional rulers. So let's look back at our chart from the beginning. The function of a physical deed? That's handled by a digitally signed transaction. The role of the Public Records Office? That's filled by the transparent public blockchain. And the job of the county recorder is performed by this competitive, decentralized network of miners. Bitcoin literally replicated an entire property law system from the ground up using code.
And what this all really means, the big takeaway here, is that Bitcoin is so much more than just digital money. It's a self-contained, self-enforcing system for proving ownership, for providing title assurance, for a brand new kind of digital property. And it does all of this without relying on any of the institutions we normally associate with law. No governments, no courts, and no banks.
Professor Chason, whose work got us started on this whole topic, puts it perfectly. He says, Bitcoin functions as law, even though it operates outside of the law. The rules are enforced, not by a judge in a courtroom, but by pure mathematics and the agreement of thousands of computers all over the world.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty powerful question to think about. We've seen how this system works for a digital currency. But if a protocol, if just lines of computer code, can create such a robust, self-enforcing system of property law for the digital world, what else could it be used for? What comes next?